Hello everybody and welcome back to another Underdog episode. Today we got Season 3, Episode 7, Paparazzi. This takes place directly after Episode 6, Chasing Wild Goose. So let's just get right into it. In the video store, the knob finally turns and the door slowly glides open. Jake's face is pale and as sweat droplets scatter on his forehead. The camera goes to Lotus's feet as they step out of the closet. Each step is light on the ground. The door closes behind them. The mechanical sound from their arms as their hands go on their hips. It goes to Dylan outside, still watching through the window. Is he out? Dylan just nods as it cuts to an angle behind Lotus's head. They look around at the floor in front of them. Then their head drags to the direction where Dylan is peering. They point their finger right at Dylan, nodding their head at him. Dylan's face immediately pulls away from the window. All 6 of you right here. Guess it's my lucky day. The music builds up and the title card plays. It cuts back to the store and the air is thick. No one is speaking and they're all standing around staring at Lotus. You're not the same guy, are you? Lotus is pointing at Alan. What makes you think that? Your posture. The way you look at me? Lotus takes a step towards Alan. Somebody really wants to talk to you. But we'll save that for after I kill all your friends. Lotus turns around and walks towards the closet door again, looking up and down at the wall. Surprised you guys came here so oblivious. All over crystallized.
Shut the hell up. 2v6 and you're really favoring your odds.
1v6. My odds are so favorable, believe it or not. Lotus turns around facing Jake. Jake, right?
I'd be the one.
Lotus walks up to Jake. Jake smiles and looks up at him. He charges up a punch and sends one flying at Lotus's right cheek. Their face doesn't budge at all. Punching a person made of metal. And here I was thinking you were the smart one. Lotus walks away. I obviously can ignore the fabulous woman of this team. They point at Miranda. Miranda! If I'm not mistaken. They turn to Zara, still pointing but now wagging their finger at her. I'm keeping an eye on you, Zara. They relax their arm and put it to their sides. But seriously, why aren't Dylan and Alice in here? It cuts to Dylan pulling on the door handle with all of his strength. You are weak without your powers. That's why I'm trying to pull this out. It cuts back inside of Lotus and them. They should really be here right now. The sound of the door budging makes all 5 snap their heads at the door. Budge after budge until the door finally swings open. And Dylan and Alice are standing there in suit. Welcome. Dylan sticks his hand out, but his powers are jammed by the same thing jamming the other's powers. Lotus begins to step forward using his 4 tentacles to grab the 4 by the neck. They keep walking forward as the 4 try to pull the tentacles off their necks, struggling. Dylan and Atlas step back outside, hoping to get out of the disruption zone. Lotus ducks through the door, and his tentacles keep extending as he gets further from the 4. Outside, the sun is glaring down, shining off Lotus's head. Coming out here doesn't yield you outside of the affected area, Dylan. Inside, the grasp around everyone's neck is only getting tighter. Alan begins to get free from the grasp and loosens it up and falls out, gasping for breath. After this, he gets up and walks to Jake and helps him out before helping the other 2. Miranda begins to run at it, but Alan stops her. Wait! We need to find what's jamming our powers. It cuts back to outside. You were searching for me. Why? Is there a cure? Shoot. If I could laugh, I'd be right now. Dylan runs at Lotus, jumping at him, and Lotus grabs him by the neck and does the same thing with his tentacle to Alice. This makes him realize the tentacles are free. Then a phasing hand goes through Lotus's chest. They look down at Alan's hand and back at Dylan and Atlas. This Alan guy. Idiot. Alan's hand retracts from his chest and Lotus turns around, slowly punching Alan when he fully turns around. With Lotus turned around, Atlas takes this opportunity to chop off one of Lotus's tentacles on their back with his phasing hand. The tentacle falls off with sparks flying out the severed part. This immediately makes Lotus turn around and send Atlas flying into a car with his foot. Dylan attempts to pull Lotus's head off, but their head begins to glow red with heat, steaming. Dylan pulls his hands off with the cloth where his hands are burned off. Dylan looks up and signals the 4 behind Lotus to go. They're all hesitant to. Alan takes all of them speeding away. Lotus punches Dylan into the same car Alice was sent into lying next to him. Send your team away. Why? Dylan coughs and begins to get up off the floor. Because... He fully gets to his feet. I just need myself to kill you. Can you kill a robot? Because, I don't have any organs or anything. Dylan is tapping Alice's head with his foot, trying to wake him up. I thought you just needed you. Dylan steps away from Alice and extends his arms out, calling for the Wanderer blades, but they don't come and nothing happens. What are you doing? Dylan shakes his hand, trying to make something happen. Lotus looks around and back at Dylan. Usually this works. Atlas shifts on the ground and starts to groan awake. Dylan looks back at Atlas and grasps the air, creating a spear of ice. He looks over his shoulder at Lotus and tightens his grip on the spear before charging at them with the sharp point forward. They grab the spear and pick it up along with Dylan, throwing it behind their back. In the air, Dylan drops the spear and uses his powers to stop his fall and launch himself back at Lotus, wrapping his arms around their neck, pulling them to the ground. Now on top of Lotus, he starts to punch their head, but just barely scuffing it. Lotus grabs Dylan's fists and pulls them apart from each other, and their tentacles pull from their back and grab Dylan by the shoulders, pulling him off. Lotus's tentacles move Dylan forward before chucking Mets to the same car from earlier, but being stopped by a speeding Atlas who is now awake. Atlas catches Dylan and puts him back on his feet. Nice of you to finally join us. Why leave out the main attraction? Dylan smiles through his mask and side-eyes Atlas, who returns the same look. I should keep going, but this was a valuable encounter. You're not going anywhere. Lotus flies off with boosters on the soles of his feet, making Alice and Dylan look up at them disappear into the sun-risen lit sky. It cuts to the sewer under New York City with the murky water dripping from the ceiling. Quiet footsteps start to approach. It cuts to a familiar pair of shiny feet walking, before stopping, and a beep sound plays 4 times. A high-pitched beep sound plays before a mechanical door whirs open and the pair of feet walk in. It cuts to the full body showing it's crystallized, walking into the high-tech open room with a few screens and machines scattered throughout. He walks up to an out-of-place black door in the corner of the room. He knocks on the door. He stares at the door with no answer and just decides to enter. He closes the door behind him, and Lotus is sitting down with a part of their head flipped open and a cartridge slot unoccupied. Crystallized looks around and sees a sticky note with perfect handwriting on it. If you could, put the cartridge on the table, back in at 7 sharp. After reading the note, he crumples it up and throws it on the ground, leaving the room, slamming the door. It cuts to Dylan sitting on the same rooftop he was on before. The sun through its, though, is dimmer than before, but nonetheless beaming from the sky. He sits there writing in a notebook, strangely writing only one word, Alice. He sighs and erases it. He then writes 2 words, Dear Alice. He starts to write away before being finished and setting the pencil aside and closing the notebook shut. He stares at the outskirts of the city, scanning the barren forest. Encapsulated in the moment, his phone begins to ring. He glances over to see the contact. It's Miranda. He picks up his phone and just looks for a moment before answering. Hey. Dylan, you know I'm attentive, right? Yeah? Are you alright? Dylan looks back at the forest. You know, growing up is funny. You experienced so many things. What are you talking about, Dylan? But nobody should go through some of the stuff we have. The deaths. The responsibilities. Dylan starts fiddling with his thumb, looking down at it before looking back at the forest. But really, in the end, experience those things are what makes life complete. He chuckles with his eyes slightly tearing up. Where is this going? Miranda, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for roping you into this. Dylan, where are you? It cuts to black before cutting to Atlas and his father sitting across from each other at a dark brown table. Son, I'm proud of you, you know. I know. His dad leans back in his chair, looking around the room before looking back at Alice. Though you're 40 years younger than me, you're a better man than I ever was. Alice looks up from the table to his dad, who is now frowning. You know that's not true, Dad. His dad sniffles and smiles, the tears bunching up in his eyes. I wasn't a superhero. Alice's frown starts to shape into a smile. Anyone can be a hero. It's who they are that makes them super. It cuts back to Dylan sitting on the roof. The sun has shifted further west. His notebook is still closed on his lap. Footsteps patter behind him, and he looks down. Miranda steps behind and to the side of him. He rests her head on the crook of Dylan's neck. You alright, Dylan? Dylan looks back up at the forest and glances to Miranda's head. I feel at peace up here. Miranda leans off and notices the notebook. She reaches for it, but Dylan puts his hand on it defensively. Miranda gives him the smug look, and that makes him sigh and hand the notebook to her. She opens it and sees that only one page is writing on it. Her one smug look goes to a more saddening look. She taps Dylan's shoulder with the book before handing it back to him. He closes it and puts it back in his lap. Miranda sits on the edge and throws her legs over it. She puts her hands on her knees and stretches out her legs. She looks at Dylan, who is staring off into the distance. Are you mad? That Alan? I don't know if mad's the word. More just confused. Miranda also begins to look out into the forest. What are your plans for Lotus? I don't know. Kind of made me forget about the crystal. Miranda always seemed to forget because she slightly widens her eyes. I bet Jake is handling it. Yeah, probably. Dylan nods, slowly starting to turn his head towards Miranda. Miranda looks at Dylan. Do you remember that movie we saw from that ad? Yeah? Dylan smiles and it cuts to the warehouse. Jake is focused on the main screen, typing on the keyboard and clicking buttons on the console. Zara walks up behind him, watching what he's doing. What you doing? Jake types something on the keyboard before seeming to even notice Zara is there.
Lotus stole the show back there, and the crystal's still alive.
Why don't you just take a rest, like Alan? Zara looks at Alan sleeping on one of the pull-out beds before looking back at the screen.
I'm not tired.
Zara looks over to the 3 empty energy cans lying on the table. I wonder why. Jake swipes the cans off the table, making them bounce on the ground, filling the building with the sound. Listen, just don't go from yourself. Jake types the key and spins around in his chair.
Good thing I'm done right now. I found him.
Where?
The sewers. Remember that one time?
Nalumbo. That water pump thing. Search Nalumbo. Jake types in Nalumbo into the console and steps back. The screen shows it's a scientific word for a lotus flower. Jake shakes his head.
Damn!
Should have paid attention in biology. Jake stands up and throws his black jacket on and starts to walk out the door, but stops and looks back at Alan. Zara stops and sees Jake looking. Should we take him? Jake side-eyes Zara.
We'll be alright.
Jake turns back around and walks out the door with Zara following him out. It cuts to Jake and Zara walking through the dark sewer with grimy water flowing throughout. They seem to walk through endless halls until they see the exposed opening to the orange and white sleek hallway. They step into the sewage water and trudge across to the opening and enter. As the dim light from the sewer stops reaching into the hallway, they turn on some flashlights and attach them to their shirts. They continue down the hallway until they reach a door with no knob or any way of opening it. Zara tries to twirl it open a portal, but it doesn't work.
Lotus really loves jammers.
Jake looks around the hallway while Zara looks on the other side. Jake tugs on Zara's shoulder.
Hey.
Zara turns around and looks at what Jake's light is pointed at. A vent. Zara looks at Jake with an annoyed look, and Jake hits her with a fake smile. It cuts to Jake crawling into the vent. He stops and takes a shaky breath.
It's so hot in here.
Ugh. Jake starts to crawl again. It cuts to a bright room with a constant fan sound filling the room. In the corner, the vent on the wall comes off as the wall slowly as Jake peeps his head in the room, setting the vent on the top of a cabinet to the right of the vent, and Jake scans the room before climbing out and into the room, stepping onto the desk below the vent. He steps down from the desk as Zara gets out the vent and follows Jake. They both fully take in the room. A lovely furnished room, with the orange and white paint on the walls chipping away. The light, though bright, is emitting a pale yellow light from the LEDs in the ceiling. Jake flips open some folders that are laid out on some tables on the edges of the room.
This place sucks.
Zara steps to some machinery, making whirring sounds. A blind man could notice that. She runs her finger along the face of it, spreading dust everywhere. They both raise their eyebrows and look at each other as the main door starts to slide open. Both Jake and Zara hide behind the closest items to them. For Zara, the machine, and for Jake, a filing cabinet. As the door fully slides open, Crystallized walks in and shuts the door behind him. Jake looks at Zara and raises his hands, shaking his head. Zara mouths the words, "I don't know." Jake turns his head to the side, listening in on Crystallized's actions. All he can hear is footsteps. He then hears him set something down and start rummaging through it. Zara motions her finger in a moving signal, but Jake shakes his head at the idea. Crystallized stops rummaging and heads to a desk, still unable to see the two. Jake looks at the ground for a moment, thinking of something. He tries to go through his pocket as quiet as possible and pulls out the heat goggles. As he starts to put the glasses on, Crystallized wraps his arms around his neck, making him drop the glasses, skidding them across the floor. "You thought you could sneak up on one of us?" Crystallized transforms his hand into a sharp-pointed sword. "When I talk, you answer. Understood?" Jake doesn't say anything, so Crystallized brings the swords closer. "Understood." Jake nods his head, scared. "So tell me, why are you here?"
I was trying to find you.
Crystallized laughs and throws his head back.
Funny till I kill you.
Crystallized puts his sword to touching Jake's neck. And how would you do that?
With her?
A crackling red beam of energy shoots at Crystallized's head, beginning to melt it. Turns out it's Zara. Crystallized lets go of Jake and starts to scream as his head starts to melt from the extreme heat. His curdling screams fill the room as Zara melts him to a puddle of reflective silver. Zara stops the glasses and hands them to Jake, who grimaces from their temperature.
We need to get out of here.
Zara nods as she begins to run to the main door, sliding it open, and it cuts to black. It cuts to the movie theater that Dylan and Miranda went to. It's after the movie, and they walk out into the lobby. It was a solid 7. Nothing crazy. Bullshit, you were invested. Just because I'm invested doesn't mean I liked it. Also, a 7 is a pretty high rating. Yeah, okay. They turn a corner. I gotta use the restroom. Just wait for me. I'll be back. Miranda speed walks away from Dylan and into the bathroom. Dylan stands around, but overhears a conversation talking about someone with these swords who killed a bunch of people. What was that? The two boys look up at Dylan. There was this guy in California. He killed a bunch of people, and when the cops came, he just stood there with blood dripping from his blades. Sorry, did you say blades? Yeah, there's 2 blades with the handles wrapped in cloth. Dylan's face goes white. Hey, let's go. Miranda walks by and grabs Dylan's arm, walking him towards the exit. His attention's still on the boys as they go back to talking. They walk out the door, and it cuts to black, and the credits roll. The end of episode 7.